is Election Day. I had a request some time ago to have a program about why it's necessary for people to vote. The request came from Mrs. Beverly Robeson, who is the chairman of a committee to get out the vote, nonpartisan committee as I understand it. So we will be hearing from her and what her committee is doing and has done. And we also have as our guest tonight Walter Baker, who has a unique distinction that only a few people, not only locally or in Kentucky or the United States, has had. There are three branches of government: the legislative, executive, and judicial. Mr. Baker has served in all three. He served in the legislative, both in the House of Representatives and the Senate in the Kentucky legislature. He served on the Supreme Court of Kentucky, making the judiciary, and then he served in the executive department of the federal government in Washington. So he does have a unique distinction. He also, having been through as many elections as he has been, should be able to tell us about the importance of voting. First, Mrs. Robeson, tell me about your committee and how it got together and why.
Well, it got together because there wasn't a really great voter turnout, and there were a group of us who were interested in getting out the vote. So we formed a nonpartisan voter outreach committee and have tried to raise awareness amongst the Republicans. You know, why you should and why you shouldn't vote. Dear citizens, please do.
When was the committee formed?
About 2 years ago.
So you've been active in getting out the vote for the past 2 years?
Yes, we've tried to do that specifically under the committee. We've given out these little ribbons to some of the various clubs and organizations. We've put out a little pamphlet, hand distributed, why we vote. We've put out voting signs in quite a few of the stores, and I'm hoping that this year we'll have about 150 vote signs out just to remind people it's time to vote.
How large is your committee?
About 5.
Do you have any help other than the 5 members of the committee in putting the reasons to vote in public places?
We hope to this year, and last year some of the magistrates were kind enough to put them in the county stores since they were nonpartisan. And all they said was vote. When they heard that, they thought, okay, that we can do.
What are some of the reasons, as far as you're concerned, that one should vote?
Oh, heavens, I happen to have about a small book here of things like that. I guess one of the things is that it's if you're a citizen, it's your duty. I mean, it's as simple as that. We have rights, we have responsibilities. I'm happy to be an American, and as such, you know, I do the things like pay my taxes and renew my driver's license and all the things I'm supposed to do. And the way I was brought up, I was taught I was supposed to vote too, because we live in a democratic republic, and part of that is exercising or showing our opinions.
Where were you brought up?
Mostly in St. Matthews. Started out in Nebraska, but mostly in St. Matthews, Kentucky.
Have you lived in other states? What I'm about to get at, if you have, is the comparison of the turnout in other states than Kentucky.
Oh, I couldn't possibly tell you that because I worked quite long hours most of my life. I always managed to vote and try to be up with the issues, but I couldn't really tell you about voting percentages. All I know that it's been going down and down. Half of us didn't vote in 1996, and more may stay home in 2000. Now that surprises me with presidential election coming up.
You mentioned citizens' duty to vote, which reminded me of the fact that George Washington, after he finished his second term as President of the United States and returned to Virginia, was subpoenaed to appear as a juror, and he attended court, and the judge offered to excuse him. And he refused and told the judge, that as a citizen of the country, it was his duty to serve as a juror. So you have an analogy there. If it was the duty of George Washington to serve as a juror, even after his distinguished career, certainly the average citizen has a duty to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Walter, what has been your experience in reasons that people give for not voting? I'm sure you've asked them.
Well, many times people say it doesn't make a difference, that irrespective of whom they vote for, when the election's over and whoever has won, that public policy does not change, and that their voice, meaning the individual citizen's voice, is not reflected in what the winner does in public office. That's one excuse that people give.
How would they know that?
Well, I guess by following in the newspapers what government does, or be it a legislative body or be it an executive leader such as a governor or a president.
But if more people got out to vote, the results might be different.
That certainly would, or certainly could be.
So that's why I raised the question, how do they know what they're talking about?
Well, they may not, but this, you asked me what
Yeah,
they say, and I'm trying to faithfully portray that. And a lot of people feel disconnected from their government, that for whatever reason they think it's remote, that it may not affect them. It affects them drastically in everything that they do, whether you are a high school youngster age 16 and you want to get a driver's license. What you have to do to get that license now is different from what it was when I turned 16. Whether you are an adult driving down the public highways of Barron County and you're required by law to have that safety belt on, which didn't even exist when I learned to drive. On to how much of your money government takes in the form of taxes, both direct or hidden, what it does with those taxes, whether you agree or disagree with the utilization that's made of your money and your neighbor's money in terms of public projects. So, you know, there are all kinds of reasons that people give. I think I think it's critically important in a democratic society that you have widespread participation in elections, because I think it's important that the public buy in to the government of which it is a part, and feel and consciously realize that that government belongs to the people. It doesn't belong to whoever temporarily is an occupant of an office. It belongs to the body politic generally. And if it doesn't, or if that elected leader doesn't behave the way you as a citizen and voter believe he or she should behave, you can get rid of that leader and send somebody else up there.
But instead, there's too many of them that don't want to vote or do anything about the leadership except complain after the election's over. Ms. Robeson, how successful do you think that your campaign has been to get out the vote?
I don't know. Probably not really too much, which is one reason I was so glad that you said that you would have us on Glasgow Wants to Know. I wanted to add, and now I've only been in town 4 years. I've had 2 remarks made to me, one by a lady who said she didn't feel it was her place to vote, and a gentleman who said, well, he didn't want to register to vote so that he wouldn't have to serve on a jury. But I've gone through some material, and
Oh, excuse me, before you get to that, why did the lady say that, what reason did she give?
I was so shocked I didn't ask. I said, well, thank you very much, and hung up. I didn't know what to say or what to ask, and I didn't want to be intrusive.
Sometimes you have to be to learn stuff.
Well, evidently. Evidently.
Go ahead.
Oh, I had just jotted a few things down, and for one thing, I think perhaps people are inclined to see voting as political rather than civic, and I'm going at it more from a civic angle, such as George Washington felt it was his duties. And I do think there are some complex issues, and now that our world is changing, actually our state is part of a region, our region is part of the country, and the country is getting to be very much part of the world. And so that can make things very complicated and hard to keep up with.
Do you talk to any of the political parties and emphasize to them the need to get out to vote?
Yes, I have. And one thing I have noticed, and if I'm misspeaking, forgive me, but I hear people or candidates say, you know, vote for me. No matter which one of several parties you're in, it's sort of, I need your vote. And I keep thinking, well, America needs your vote. You know, I mean, it doesn't matter to me what party you belong to. If you're being an active citizen, and if you talk to other citizens, you're maybe going to find out something you didn't know. Maybe your views might change, maybe mine might change, maybe we both might pick on you. I mean, you never know what's going to happen.
You made some reference there to regard to somebody felt it was too political and it wasn't their civic duty.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any definition for the difference in civic duty and political?
No, and I hope there is one, just like I keep reading the dictionary over and over again and wishing that it would tell me the difference between morals and morality and ethics, because I just seem to think there is, but the dictionary's not agreeing with me.
Well, now you raising a subject there that we could get into and be here forever.
Well, excuse me.
But Walter, is there any difference in being civic-minded and politically minded?
Well, I think they are two parts of the same hand. If you are civic-minded, and go back to the Latin word civitas, the word for city or state. If you're civic-minded, you are concerned and interested and involved with what's going on in your community or your state or your nation. If you're politically involved, you're the same thing. You may not be as concerned for the right reasons, or maybe you are, because we tend to think that politicians are are interested only in being Democrat or being a Republican and nothing else. And that I have found not really to be true among most people I've known in the leadership in both parties. But they really are politically or civically, they're really two parts of the same thing.
Well, the bottom line, don't you have to be political in order to be civic?
I think you do, yes.
Probably.
You can't fulfill your civic duty unless you consider what is civic insofar as your government and so forth is concerned. And you can't do that without being involved in politics one way or another.
True.
What other reasons have you had people to give you?
Well, those were the only two that I honestly really heard, but just from casual conversation, you might say, not in direct answer to a question of mine. I think things that you said, people feel like there's a lack of power to change things. They just really don't. Well, people are not aware that by not voting, they're letting somebody else run their lives. I vote, and if I vote for you, maybe you're going to do something to run their lives. And really, who am I to say how they should live their lives? They ought to be voting, preferably for you, but you know
Well, I remember
how that goes.
something somebody once said very cynically, I never vote, it just encourages them, referring to people in government and in politics. But if you never vote, what you're doing is surrendering your right to participate in part of the political process to those individuals who do participate. And they may or may not be motivated by the same good things that you're motivated by. And so you are acquiescing in someone else making the decision for you. And it's been my experience, as you alluded to early in the program, that those people who don't vote and who don't participate in the process are the first ones to complain about something they don't like that does happen in the process.
I've observed that people who don't vote complain a whole lot more than people who do. And I've noticed that over the years. And I base that on the individuals that I know that haven't voted by one means or another. I've learned that they haven't. But they certainly know how to complain, and they know that, according to them, something should be changed.
Now, we are lucky in America in that basically, with all due respect to the Mr. Perot and the Reform Party, that basically we have two major political parties in this nation. And the fact that we only have two parties means that each party, which has a broad umbrella of people of various fringes and viewpoints, each party has to move toward the center to some extent if it's going to capture a majority of the vote in an election, which means that while neither party is going to do everything that any one citizen wants, you couldn't expect it to in a nation of 250 million people, it does mean that both parties are going to have necessarily to win politically to do substantially what a majority of the people want. Or if they don't, then they'll be ousted the next time and the other party will come in.
What do you think of the polls? By that I mean, is that a good basis for the people in Washington and in Frankfurt to know the feelings of the people and what they want?
I think polls are the most damnable thing that ever happened in the democratic process.
Could I second that?
Because increasingly politicians look to the polls to tell them what to say. They ought to say what they think should be said, and if the public responds to it, fine. If they don't, then respond to someone who does say and espouse what you believe in.
You anticipated me. That was my next question. So you've already answered that. How much contact does the average politician have actually with his constituents?
He should have a lot, and in most instances you necessarily have a lot of contact. There's no way you can avoid it. As when I was a state legislator, member of the House, and then later member of the state Senate, my wife and I were always attending meetings and going to public events of one type or another in one of the 7 counties I represented. And always bumping into people, seeing people, being available where someone could pull you aside and say, look, this is going to be coming up in Frankfurt and I want you to do such and so on it, or I think that's the most horrible idea anybody ever had. And you pick up on that. You have to circulate if you want to go back. And you have to listen for 2 reasons. One, I think it's your responsibility to listen because you are a representative of the people. And secondly, if you don't listen at your peril because they realize you aren't listening and they'll send someone else who does.
I agree that the office holder or the candidate should circulate among the people, but it seems to me that now the circulation is confined. For instance, they'll come to the county seat and have a meeting at a particular place and invite everybody to come. Only a few show up. And then they think that they have gotten the impression, or too many of them, that they've gotten the impression of what the people want in that community.
And the few who do show up, it's been my experience in terms of political rallies, are the same few who show up for that particular party at each rally down through the years.
And most of them have an axe to grind.
Well, could I mention something to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Of course, as I say now, I didn't grow up here, was just here for 4 years, and I guess maybe I was pretty lucky. I sort of felt I was as good as anybody else, so I mean, I'm writing my legislators periodically if something happens and I have a serious thought about it one way or another, I write them and tell them. Well, thinking about getting out the vote, put a few letters out around the state, and they were published on some NPR stations. And then I thought, no, wait a minute. What's wrong with this is one person is doing it, and while one person can maybe make a difference, so this year I took a slightly different tack and asked 4 members of the nonpartisan voter outreach committee, plus 2 or 3 others, to write a voter's letter. And of course, it's a woman's organization, so, oh my goodness, I couldn't do that. And then one by one they finally said, yes, what'll I say? And I said, what you want to. And one woman said, well, doesn't matter who you're for if you don't go out and vote. I said, that's a fine letter. You might start it out, dear editor, and sign it sincerely. But that gets the message across. So probably we've had about 4 letters to the editor in the Glasgow paper now, and they've each been from a different person with a different voice. You know, nothing, none of this postcard mailing business, as I'm sure you've gotten at times, but just each person's honest opinion of why you ought to vote. And so I think maybe that might possibly start. It's going to take a long time, but it might help.
Has your committee thought of meeting with various women's organizations located in different sections of the county?
Part of it is a matter of woman power to do that, although we did make an effort to call, got a list from the Chamber of Commerce, and called several of the clubs, asked them if they were interested in voting ribbons and or a little list of why we vote. So, I think this year it's people who already vote, but still they may disseminate the information. AARP, one of the churches, the Garden Club.
Well, there's women's organizations in various sections of the county.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could get the message across to them.
Homemakers groups.
Homemakers
Right.
groups, and then there are agricultural groups and so forth. If you could get the message to them and get them interested, I think you might have a better response
Probably.
to getting out the vote.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that has changed since I was a young man and changed since I've been here in Barron County, efforts are sometimes made for house-to-house canvass by a candidate. But again, I don't think that is as stringent now as it was when I came here. And not only that, some candidates are like one that I remember was running for the legislature before Walter's time. And instead of him making contact out in the county with the particular individuals that he wanted to vote for him, he sent his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't work too well.
Oh, really?
And another thing that has changed is you had political rallies when I first came here all over the county. They'd be at one, like Temple Hill one time, Austin Tracy the next time, and this, that, and the other, and the candidates all were there and spoke.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they were encouraged to come out. That is, they encouraged the people to come out and vote because they wanted them to vote for them.
Mm-hmm.
But there had to be somebody that sponsored that. And now there is nothing that I know of that attempts to even sponsor anything like that. Now, Walter may know more because he's been involved in politics more than I have. I'm merely an observer. And what you grinning about?
Merely an observer. Well, television, which is the medium we're using tonight to get to the people, television in one way has ruined politics in that it has provided a means for the candidate to go directly into the home without ever being there, and without ever having that one-on-one contact with the individual voter. Now, this is a necessity. You're running in a state of 3.7 or 8 million people, as Kentucky is, but it means that so many of the candidates today buy the TV time, and they spend their time on TV, or their media gurus devise various types of ads for them, which they place on television, rather than going and seeing the voters. And you will find that the major candidates will spend a disproportionate amount of their time in the counties that are the major TV markets, in the cities, Louisville, Lexington, and Northern Kentucky. And we'll just dart back and forth among those three places. They'll come down to Bowling Green and pick up Channel 13, and they'll go to Paducah and pick up the station there. But they'll concentrate in the Golden Triangle.
That's true,
Mm-hmm.
but they aren't learning anything from the public
No,
by doing
no,
that.
not at all. They are talking instead of listening.
Right, 30-minute spots. And about half the time, they are half-truths.
And sometimes that's about half of a half.
I agree with you that television is, in some respects, is ruining ruining the government. Actually, in the final analysis, they're ruining the government by these TV spots, and of course that costs an awful lot of money that could be used elsewhere to good advantage. But that is another subject that we could get into.
Oh, yes. What did I do?
But this again is neither the time
Yeah.
nor the place for that. Do you, of your own knowledge, Ms. Robeson, know of any one election where a few votes made the difference?
I have material like that, but I don't think I have it with me tonight, but I bet we can turn that over to you, can't we?
Well, I can tell you, probably one of the most significant elections in terms of a few votes making a tremendous difference in what happened later in this nation was in the Democratic primary in the state of Texas in 1948 between then Governor Coke Stevenson and then Congressman Lyndon B. Johnson. Johnson came out on top by 79 votes out of several million cast. Some question where the 79 came from and the way they came, but that was one election decided by extremely small margin. There was a congressional race in Connecticut a couple of years ago that I think 10 or 15 votes decided. There was a presidential election in Kentucky in 1952 in which Governor Stevenson of Illinois defeated General Eisenhower by 600 votes. I can point to several races I personally was involved in. My first primary, my first election of any type, as a candidate in Barron County in 1967, I was a youngster. I was running against an older person in my party who had been an activist in the party for many years. Nobody gave me much of a chance of winning. I worked my tail off. My wife worked. We did everything we were big enough to do. And I sneaked by 60 votes in the primary. There was another election where I didn't sneak by. I was defeated. After I came back from Washington, I'd been succeeded by Senator Travis here in Glasgow, and he and I clashed in a primary, and I lost by 24 votes out of 7 counties.
What was the percentage of the turnout?
Percentage was abysmally low. Joe Travis and I both laughed one time about it and said, looking at the number of people who turned out, probably they didn't want either one of us. It was about 20%, I think, or 22% maybe. I had another election I won by 112. So I've been down to close races. We've had congressional races in Jefferson County in the 3rd Congressional District, decided a number of times by around 1,000 votes, or even smaller on one occasion, as I recall. Bill Calger, who had been mayor of Louisville in the 1960s and then elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. Bill Calger was challenged in 1970 by a real close friend of mine from the Democratic side, whom I respect tremendously, Ron Mazzoli. And I think Ron won that congressional seat by 212 votes.
Less than 600. I remember that. It was less than 600. To add a little bit to what you just recited, there was a constitutional amendment changed in Kentucky that was, as I recall, less than 6,000 votes, the state as a whole, and there's some question of where they came from and how they came. However,
was that the one on the getting rid of the $5,000
right,
salary limit?
Right. Of course, it was Actually, it was very beneficial because it certainly needed to be done. But my point is that it shows and did show the need for the people to get out and vote and be interested, because in some respects, and there's some people that claim that in order to pass it, they stole the election. And but yet it was something beneficial and something that the state needed. And I didn't understand then why there wasn't more interest in that, because it had something in it that the people had been fussing about for some time. So that's another example of what you're talking about, except in that particular instance you had something that was very, very important to the Commonwealth as a whole, and yet there was a very small turnout on that vote also, and yet it changed the Constitution of Kentucky and what's happened in Kentucky since then.
Well, it had been a straitjacket, and I think the year was either 1947 or 49 that this was done. As Uhel knows, I've been researching about Kentucky's highest court now for a couple of years, and I was looking into something a couple of days ago. In 1850, the salary for our judges on our state's highest court was $5,000 a year. In 1947, it was still $5,000 a year, almost 100 years later. And with all the inflation and everything else that had taken place, we were fortunate to get anybody of quality to serve in those offices at that salary, and we were unfortunate in that it probably barred many very capable people who could have served and served very well, but who had obligations to family and whatnot that they could not.
And that's why they needed to change the Constitution to remove that cap. It was rather odd, I think even today, that the president of the University of Kentucky, and probably Louisville too, are paid more money than any official in the state. But at that particular time, you had presidents of particularly University of Kentucky that was making 8 or 9 or 10 times more than the highest official in the state.
And that doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense, but it had to be done in order to have a university that was going to be halfway progressive. So you have a very important, and your committee has a very important mission. There's no doubt about that. What you need to do is get the message out there and get it done.
Well, you can help. You can too. It's quite all right. But, you know, I really just have not heard the politicians say, you know, whether it's local, state, or national, that this is a great United States of America, and everybody who says the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag ought to get out there and vote. You know, it doesn't do any good to pledge allegiance if you don't take any action, and I think it's just a matter of connecting with the people. And as I say, maybe there's not much difference between politic and civic, but just a feeling for your city, your country, you know, your county, your state, your region, your nation. Just that alone, you would think would maybe make people be interested. I know that we live a frantic life these days. It's maybe not any longer hours than those who walk behind a mule from sunup to sundown, or whatever you do on a farm. I'm not a farm person. But our lives seem so complicated.
Well, I don't have any figures, but my recollection is that the voter turnout was heavier those years, percentage-wise, than it is now.
It's been gradually declining.
It's been gradually getting lower, and again, I think you can
But you've also got two other things, or a couple of other things involved. We now, because of the Motor Voter Act and the efforts to see that everyone is registered, when you get your driver's license, when you go to the welfare office, various means are used. The potential electorate that is registered is a lot larger than it used to be. So the percentage of the registrants who participate, I think, has gone down somewhat.
And the registration's gone up,
Right, right.
which increases the disparity. Yeah, I know where you're coming from there. Unfortunately, I agree with you that every citizen has got a responsibility to vote. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But to get them out to vote, you're going to have some organization. And as an example, years ago, I hadn't been here in Barron County very long. There was a very serious election. You had to win to float a bond for the Glasgow Independent School District. It passed, but another young man and I were designated to get the vote out. And we got it out, and it passed, and that was chiefly responsible because it gave this system the money to become a good school system. Barron County tried it 2 or 3 times, and they voted it down. But this school, as a result of that bond issue, has been a good school. Now, the way we did that, we organized street by street in the whole town. We had essentially women that lived on that street and so forth, that by neighborly talk and so forth would contact the others, and they knew pretty much how they were going to vote and how their husbands were going to vote. And incidentally, it's been my observation that most of the time the spouses vote alike. It's not always true, but most of the time. So by that, they knew we knew in each street who was going to vote and how they were going to vote. And then we saw on election day that those that we knew were going to vote for the bond issue got to the polls.
Now, some of the same techniques are still used by the political parties, but in a way that I think is very frustrating to many of the citizens. In several of my elections, we would organize calling committees of local voters who would call on my behalf to all the registrants in a precinct. Well, nowadays, the national political parties do this, and they hire some calling group. They may be in Montana, Connecticut, or Arkansas, and call, and they don't know who the county judge of Barron County is any more than they know who the county judge of Travis County, Texas is. But they're calling in.
Well, there's another disadvantage to that, I think. You've got too many companies that are calling you at odd hours to try to sell you something.
Oh, yes.
And I don't know, I hear more people agreeing with the way I feel about it. I resent it. Just like last night when I was eating dinner. I had a telephone call trying to sell me something. And sometimes I tell them I'm just not interested and hang up, and the other times I'm being very unsocial. I just hang up on them.
Well, I sometimes get a little bit rude, and I shouldn't, but I don't appreciate their calling.
But as a result of that, I think that the average person now is less interested and is less influenced by telephone calls than they ever were.
True.
Right, and you almost have to be careful when you call and who you call. Because, I mean, people call and want to sell me things that have no relationship to my life. And, you know, on one of the telephone calls about, you know, who's your long distance carrier, I finally said, excuse me, but I'm so very bored with this subject. You know, thank you for calling, goodbye. Slam on the phone. It just is too much. And, you know, things like that really almost cut into your ability to want to call people because they're already so tired. They've hung up on 5 people before you, and now you're calling and saying, hello, are you going to vote, and how do you feel? And they think this is too much.
The best way yet is personal contact. Everybody likes to be noticed and personally contacted. And if you do that and then have somebody to get them out, you can get out a larger vote. Now, we had a large turnout in that election because of what had been done by way of organizing it street by street. So getting out to vote, as you state, is essential and very important. And I have been involved in, I remember in 3 different, and I think maybe more, well, yes, 4 election contests. And when you have an election contest, you have only a very few votes separating 2 or more candidates. So you ask for a recount of the vote. And then you really get into some partisanship and the truth being handled recklessly.
Now, that's one of the few times that you can force a citizen to divulge
right,
for whom he or she voted.
right. And I remember one in Monroe County where you had one man that was registered in Monroe County and also in Allen County and voted in both places.
Well, I remember you all in one of my races. I was down in Tracy precinct of Barron County and over into Fountain Run in Monroe County. And I ran into this individual and I asked him, because county line is a little indistinct down there, I asked him, well, which county do you vote in? Which county are you registered in? He said, well, I vote in both of them. And I said, well, or I'm registered in both of them. And I said, well, which one do you vote in? And he said, well, it pays more in Monroe.
Well, that might have been the same one that voted both places. He might have got the same pay from both counties, but that happened a long time ago. Another time, in the race for city council here in Glasgow, there was a tie vote for a council seat. And we had a recount, and it was still tied. So they had to flip a coin to see which one was going to serve. And that was the law, and that's how it came about. But again, it shows how one vote in that particular race would have changed it. And again, in that particular race, one of the candidates had some members of his family that hadn't voted, which would have made a difference in the race.
Well, there was a tie race in Logan County for state representative back in the late 70s, and they had to flip a coin to see which one got to go to Frankfort.
And there again, that could have changed. There have been occasions when something was defeated in the legislature by 1 or 2 votes. And he could tell you more about that than I, but they've been very close. And the man that won on the flip of the coin might have been the man that controlled a particular vote. Which again goes back to how important it is to get out and vote.
Well, maybe if enough of us, and that's men and women too, ask people to get out and vote, maybe they will. And if they vote, maybe they'll pay attention to the issues as well.
Oh, one vote, if I recall my history correctly, in the United States Senate in 1867 in the impeachment of President Andrew Johnson determined whether he would be ousted as president or would remain as president.
Right. It was one vote. Very close. Closer than the one we recently have had, but and actually, as far as that one was concerned, and looking back on history, it was virtually a partisan affair. It wasn't a matter of how he had conducted his office or anything like that, but you had some so-called reformers wanting to penalize the South, and they did penalize the South, which again, and it shows you again, and incidentally, that small group and so forth represented a small faction of the country. But again, it shows how that can affect people, because really what they did after the war was
Determine the political tides of a region of this nation for a century.
it certainly did, and started the Jim Crowism.
Right.
Because what they did, they put all African Americans in all of the essential United States Senate and in the representatives and so forth and so on. And there was a revolt, and that's what created, had much to do with the creation of the problem we've still got today that hadn't been completely solved. So a few votes insofar as some of the members of that coalition, a few votes against them would have changed that. So you never know.
Oh, well, maybe we've helped create the impression that everybody really ought to get out and vote. You know, if you're a parent, do you tell your children that you're going to vote? Do you tell them that it's important? Do you tell them that if they're old enough that they ought to register and go ahead and vote? I think being an informed citizen is probably one of the most important things we can do. You know, we could lose this democracy, this, or really democratic republic, which is what we have. We could lose the darn thing by having a very, very, very small segment of the population bother to go to the polls, vote, have their way, whatever outlandish thing it might be, and oh my goodness, we could be in a real problem.
Well, your point is well made, but a perfect example of what you're talking about was Hitler's rise to power.
Oh yes.
He was elected and then became chancellor, and again supposedly in a democratic process, except they were abusing some of the voters to get voters to get in there in the first place. But then after he became chancellor, why, he became dictator immediately.
Well, maybe we could give a wake-up call.
The line between democracy and dictatorship is a very, very fragile line. And the extremes of democracy lead directly to dictatorship. And only where you have a voting, participating electorate who are willing to place certain restraints upon themselves, and their leaders assume those same restraints, can you really preserve the democracy?
One other question I think we should talk about, and that is the election that's coming up 2 weeks from today. you've got one candidate that I haven't encountered anybody yet that doesn't concede that he's going to be elected for a second term as governor. So then you have the question, why is it important, or is it important, for the members of the Republican Party to go vote?
Well, the contest for governor in 1999 is really a contest for which party will come in second.
Right, that's what I'm
Right,
getting at.
yeah.
Now
And that
explain.
is between Gatewood Galbraith of Lexington of the Reform Party and Pepe Martin of the Republican Party. And whichever party comes in second will receive, at least for the next 4 years, those seats that are allocated between the two major political parties on various state boards and commissions.
And there are many of them.
And there are many of them, and very important.
Very important,
seats.
right.
So whether Miss Martin musters enough vote to outrun Gatewood, or Gatewood has enough marijuana supporters to overwhelm Miss Martin, will decide who sits in those critically important seats.
And that can very easily determine certain avenues as far as the next administration is concerned, even though you have a Democratic governor.
Absolutely. And you know, if enough people don't go out and vote, usually you find the people who really have an agenda way out here, way out there, who are the ones who are so active to show up. Well, if the people who can compromise in the middle don't show up, then here we're going to be left with these widely divergent views, and you know, as you sort of implied, have one of the other parties, because there are getting to be more and more. There's Reform, Libertarian, the No Tax Party, and I don't know, but I think I read the other day there were something like about 6 that really had. Well, do we have a Green Party here in the United States? I know it's quite active in Germany.
No, I don't think so.
But
I don't.
there were about.
You'd have it in Minnesota if you had it anywhere.
This is
That-
true.
that's-
5 or 6 parties, you know, which might be interesting and might make us all change our ways.
But this year illustrates sort of a breakdown of our political process. Both, I think, we all will concede that Paul Patton is going to be reelected governor. And most everybody I talk with expresses the same viewpoint. Paul Patton would be a better second-term governor if he had had a more competitive Republican candidate running against him. Good candidates force both candidates to be sharper, to refine their approach, to be better prepared, to focus more clearly on issues that need to be focused on. And the challenge that Governor Patton will face in his second 4 years will be being a focused governor in spite of the fact that he was overwhelmingly elected, as he most likely will be. Because the governors, the people that come and talk to governors don't tell them bad things, they tell them how great they are. And a governor needs sometimes to be told, well, you may be great, but there are some areas where you're not as great as you might be. All of us need that, not just governors.
This is true.
Maybe we're fortunate because of the very thing you're talking about, that we've got a majority of Republicans in the Senate in Kentucky. Now, that's bound to act somewhat as a brake on him and his ideas, and he's going to have to consider them, whereas if the Democrats controlled the Senate, he wouldn't have that particular
Right,
break.
you're exactly right, and I think that's one of the checks and balances that is illustrated so beautifully in this political process today here in Kentucky.
It has been illustrated also on the national scene, there are a lot of people that think that the executive branch, the president, and the majority of Congress should be the same party. That's not always true. And you have the same braking effect that we were talking about. Time's up. I appreciate each of you's time. We've had quite a discussion here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.